I'm excited about the next conversation. Really looking forward to this chat with DeRay and a topic for the culture. So let's bring DeRay on stage, please.
Hey.
How you doing, sir? How's life?
Today is a busy day, but it's good to be here.
Good. Came in yesterday?
Yeah, I came in yesterday. I'm back home tomorrow.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I saw you tweet. You said it's cold.
It is cold, but I wear a vest every day, so it's good. But I think about, I'm from Baltimore, so I think about the East Coast as like the West Coast is like always sunny.
Yeah.
Everybody here is always on a beach, but that is not San Francisco.
No, not today. not this week, anyway. Not this week. Really appreciate you joining us at Tech Inclusion. And you and I met offline officially about a year ago through a mutual colleague, Leslie Miley. And this was great to now to have that interaction move to this. So appreciate you joining us. Baltimore. Who was DeRay before he was DeRay? Like I interviewed Sean King in New York, and I asked Sean the same question. Who was Sean King before Sean King? So I'm interested in hearing your answer. Who was DeRay before DeRay?
I was the same person, just didn't have as many followers on Twitter, right? So, I grew up in Baltimore. Both my parents were addicted to drugs. My father raised us. My mother left when I was 3. She just came back when I was 30. And in so many ways, we grew up in a community of recovery. So me, my sister, and my father we are still really close. My sister's name is DeRay. We're not twins. We're just black from Baltimore. And she is an assistant principal at an elementary school in Delaware. We both grew up and became middle school math teachers completely randomly. I taught 6th grade. 6th grade is the best grade. 6th grade is beautiful. 7th grade is puberty and deodorant. And if any of you have ever been around a kid who has never used deodorant before and they need to, it's rough. But my sister taught 8th grade. And she's a year older, so I was a teacher after her, and that was great. She was amazing. I went to college in Maine at Bowdoin, and Bowdoin was awesome. And after I taught, I moved back home to Baltimore and opened up an after-school, out-of-school center for middle grade. So we had 5th through 8th graders, and I had them 3 nights a week from 3 to 8 p.m., which is also a very long time to have 5th graders after they've had a full day of school. And then I had them for five days a week for 6 weeks over the summer. And then I trained new teachers. So I trained and supported 1/3 of all the new teachers in the city of Baltimore for 2 cycles, 2 school years. And then I started working in the Office of Human Capital. So I did that in Minneapolis. Mike Brown got killed. I drove to Ferguson. You know that story.
Yeah.
And then most recently, so I ran for mayor. And then most recently, I was the chief of human capital in the school system in Baltimore. So I just left that on August the 1st, and I'm back to organizing nationally.
Nice. So at the core, will you say you're a teacher?
I think that, I spent half my life in student government from 6th grade to senior in college. I was in student government. So that is if I had to identify with anything sort of earlier, it would be student government. But teaching is by far the most important thing I've ever done. I love teaching. My students are great. My kids, I call them my kids, but I don't know. They're 19 now. You're just I remember you when you were 11. You didn't know what a negative number was. So it's really wild to see them on Instagram or Facebook now. It's you're old.
Yeah. So we're at Tech Inclusion and hosted by Change Catalyst and sponsored by Group for Entrepreneurs. The tech industry, the diversity conversation. A couple years ago, it wasn't at this intersection like it is now with injustice and politics and race, and now it is. I feel like the tech industry has tried to avoid these conversations for years, or say some meritocracy, right? Where do you see this conversation now, and why do you think the tech industry should, what role do you think the tech industry should focus and be around creating inclusive culture or entrepreneurship for everyone, or focus on diversity and inclusion, how that aligns with social, civic, racial injustice?
Yeah, I don't think just tech has been running away from it. I think that people have been running away from the conversation about equity and equality and diversity and inclusion for a long time. When I think about sort of a grounding is that the difference between equality and equity is everybody gets the same thing. Equity is people get what they need and deserve. And so many people just like don't get the equity work. So when we think about like the end of racism, that's equity. The end of sexism, that's equity. When we think about what does it mean that we live, I'm a third generation reader. That my great grandmother she could sign her name and she was incredibly proud of it, but she couldn't comprehend text. I didn't come from a legacy of reading. So how to correct for those like historical wrongdoings, like that is a matter of equity. Like it's not enough to just be like, well, every kid gets a library. It's like, no, we got to like do something to correct for the historical wrongdoing. So that's that part. And then the diversity and inclusion is diversity is about bodies and inclusion is about culture, often in places. So you see people do sort of relatively good like body work. They're like, we hired 10 more women. And you're like, yeah, but it's still a like sexist workplace, right? Like that's not helpful. Or you hired 3 more trans community members, but like it's still a transphobic workplace. And I've seen people sort of make strides on the diversity front and like fail on the inclusion part or just not even focus on inclusion. To the tech industry, sort of explicitly, we just met with Sheryl Sandberg a week ago, and one of the sort of pushes in that meeting was what is the responsibility of these platforms to make inclusive communities, knowing that we've actually struggled to make inclusive communities offline. So we haven't sort of desegregated offline communities, like they're still hyper-segregated. So can we actually do that in the online space? Like, is there something different about the online space that allows us like more opportunity to like put people in proximity to other people that you wouldn't be close to? Like, how do we stamp out speech that leads to harm? Like, I think that tech has a unique opportunity to do that. Every time I'm in San Francisco, I'm shocked at or I guess I shouldn't be shocked anymore, but the rooms all look the same. It's like the people making decisions sort of all look really similar. It's like, I wish I could put all these people like on the East Coast, so just like the world looked different, outside looked different. But I think that tech can be a leader in like bringing inclusivity into something that like people can see and touch and feel every day.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yesterday, I'm trying to figure out what day it is. Yesterday, I did a panel moderation with the CEO of Reddit and the executive team. And Reddit has its history, good and bad. And it brought up the conversation around free speech, right, and values, right, and with these platforms, and how they allow free speech. What are your thoughts on where they should draw the line, how they should draw the line from the users and from employees, right?
Yeah, I think that I'm always mindful that freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from consequences, right? So like, sure, you can say it, and if something happens because you say it, then like you should be able to deal with those consequences. And I'm always shocked that people never think about protest as free speech. So with the protesters, they're like, we want you to talk in that corner and like don't yell at 3 o'clock in the morning. And it's like, well, I want my free speech to be free, right? Like I want it to be like as free as possible. And people don't think about that when they sort of engage this free speech conversation. I think about safety a lot. So like the first person ever permanently banned from Twitter was banned because he said that his tweet was, please donate to help me take out DeRay. Like that was that tweet. Or the FBI visited my house and I wasn't home and they left a business card that said like, DeRay, please give me a call when you get a chance. And my lawyer was like, do not call the FBI. It's like, got it. I remember I was doing a talk back at a movie theater for the Panthers documentary, and somebody tweeted the day before that they were going to shoot me at the screening, and the organizers were like, "Do you want to cancel it?" And I'm like, "No, because this is part of what they want to do, right? Is to make you too afraid to come out." So I was like, "Well, it'll work, it'll be fine." So we go, and like just like in a movie, like 30 minutes into the movie, all of a sudden the lights come on, the police come in, they shut down the whole movie theater. So I'm sensitive to these issues of like, what are the repercussions of platforms like not actually doing something about hate speech? I'm hopeful that places like Facebook, Twitter will be better at the obvious stuff. I think that they will have to, right? So I think that like Twitter's getting better at that, Facebook. I'm more interested, and one of the things we talked to Sheryl about was like, there are Instagram accounts with like 200,000 users that are private accounts that are like hate accounts, right? White supremacists, like the memes are hateful. And Facebook's a platform that relies on you reporting it, right? Like if you report it, they ostensibly do something about it. But it's like, what do you do about a private Instagram page, right? Like you don't really have a process to deal with those sort of things, or like the secret Facebook groups that are hate accounts. Like what is the mechanism if nobody reports it, and like what's your responsibility to that? Like I think those are going to be the questions that are going to be the tough questions to ask sort of in a year. I think that the obvious stuff, because of Charlottesville, because of what's happening, I think that they're going to like figure that out relatively quickly.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like in our community, I'm not sure if you know, I'm from North Carolina, so I'm from the South, and growing up black, we always had the saying that freedom of speech comes with consequences. I feel like I was kind of in our DNA, in our culture, but I feel like because of the lack of diversity in the tech ecosystem, that's why kind of same rules haven't applied, haven't really understood and embraced that. Yeah, you have freedom of speech, but there's consequences.
And I've been in rooms with like tech leaders who were like, we got a death threat. And they're like, oh my God, you got a death threat? And it's like, you just aren't in enough rooms, right? Like, I'm not the only person who's gotten a death threat. Like, you just need to ask the right people, you know? Or like I was just talking to a senior leader at a tech company about, they have like this safety council. And it's like, that safety council doesn't represent anybody that looks like me, right? Like, it's all these incredible organizations that I'm sure do good work in the world. They are not impacted directly by this. They represent the impacted people. And there's something about like waking up and seeing something that's like, here's your address, like on the internet, you know? And like, unless you've actually had to experience that, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. You know?
There's a different level of empathy you have when you feel it, when it happened to you.
Yeah. Like, my phone got hacked. I didn't even know you could do, and you all are tech people. I am somebody who believes in justice and has a Twitter account. And I was on a panel once, and I normally carry like 2 or 3 phones, one phone that I always have, and then at least one phone in my book bag, always charged but off. But this panel was like a rough panel. It was like I was ready to get out of there. But I had both phones like sitting on the panel, and all of a sudden the phone I use the most, the screen goes like, please activate your cell phone. And I'm like, I've never seen that screen before. Something must be wrong with my phone. So I like turn it off, turn it back on. And it's like, please activate your cell phone. I'm like, that's really weird. And I realize that like, I don't have, like the phone's not working. So I get on the other phone, I text somebody being like, Twitter, can you lock my account? I think I'm being hacked. And what they did is that they called Verizon. They got my SIM card changed over the phone, which like I didn't even know you could do. They tried to change my phone number over the phone, which luckily you can only do in person, so that was a thank you, Verizon. But they did that, and then they reset all my passwords so that the 2-factor went to a device that they control. So that was like wild in and of itself. But what was even crazier, I think this is the first time I've ever said this publicly, is that night I get a text from like a random number that's like, we know why you got hacked. So I'm like, it's like, you already have my number, so I might as well just talk to you, right? So we're going back and forth, and he's like, you have no reason to believe me, but like, I know stuff about you. And I'm like, okay. And he literally texts like every single one of my every credit card I've ever had, he just like has all the numbers, and he puts it in the thing as like proof that he has all this information. And it's like, that is a very different experience than somebody who like just randomly works at an organization and like deals with policy all day, right? Like, it's not like theoretical for me. I was like, well, I guess this guy knows everything about me. Yeah. Thankfully, I'm not hiding anything, you know? And like, so I try to be mindful of the safety question, but it is important to me that we fight for people who are impacted by some of these issues to at least be at the table. I get that like the policy people have a role, and they should be thinking about global issues, but the people who actually have to ingest it also should.
Yeah, I agree. I know a little bit what that's like. It wasn't someone hacked me, but I was meeting with an entrepreneur colleague who was friends with someone who used to work at NSA, and it was like, oh, is this the last 4 digits of your social security number? Like, okay, yeah, it's real.
It's real.
Switch gears a little bit. Facebook, Google, Twitter, all these platforms, we know, it's not like an assumption. We know they had Russian ads, they influenced our election, they affected society, affected our process of our democracy. And now there's some Senate councils coming up. What do you think is the real responsibility? Where should how should they change so this doesn't happen again? Like we seen the stories where it's like, oh, it wasn't us. We didn't take Russian ads. Our platform didn't affect the election, and we know it did. So what accountability do you believe should be in place so that doesn't happen again? And not that it just doesn't happen again in terms of our culture and what it means to be an American citizen in our democracy, but it doesn't happen again so the technology or the tech companies can be held accountable for it as well to make change, like real change.
Yeah, and this is some of what we talked about in that meeting with the Facebook folks. There were a couple of things. Is that people have been saying this before Congress asked for it, right? So, like, will platforms only respond to Congress, or will they respond to users who give critical feedback to you, right? And Cheryl said that they have responded to users before, and Congress wasn't their first time responding, and that was sort of a challenge that we had in that meeting. Another thing that I think will be important is that not only are the ads public, but that the posts become public. And what we asked for in that meeting was, will Facebook actually notify every single person who shared the propaganda that they shared the propaganda? Facebook said that they hadn't made a decision yet, but like if you were sharing like Russian propaganda, we think that you should know, right? And like there probably shouldn't be an alert that your friends know that you did it. Like I guess that probably is too far, but
If I get a notification that someone left an emotion on my photo, I should get a notification that I shared Russian propaganda.
You were a part of the Russian plan, right? Like that
Yeah,
should be like the notification that comes out. I think people should know because that like makes it real for them, right?
Yes.
And one of their pushes to us was that it was a small number of posts, small number of ads, right? And we said that we're a great example of a small number of everything can make a big difference, right?
Yes.
Like we were a small set of people in a huge country that like changed the national conversation. It didn't take 1 million of us in the street at the beginning. It took a small set of people who believed in justice. And, we didn't know everything, but we knew that Mike Brown should be alive. And like we stood on that truth every single day. And that truth carried us a long way, right? So we challenged that. So I'm interested to see what the content of the ads was. I think the Pokemon Go stuff is fascinating. It's like, y'all are really amped up about this, that you like pay for ads on Pokemon Go. Like that's pretty baller. So I'm interested to see, like, if you would go to Pokemon, like, there are probably, like, 5 more platforms that they also bought ads on that we didn't know. It is interesting that the Russians, like, understood anti-Black racism well enough to try and play on that, right? That, like, to stoke and inflame people. It also has been interesting because there are people on the left who said that the Russian interference was like propaganda in and of itself, right? That like it's a distraction, it doesn't matter, people don't vote on Russia. That was what people were saying 3 months ago, right? And now that it's coming out, those people are silent. They haven't said any, they're not like, oh, we were wrong. They're just like not saying anything. And I think that we do need to take this more serious than we are.
Yeah. It's light when it's, an emoji, Pokemon, these games and so forth. We're talking about AR and VR. But we know the impact, like you said, of our cultures and the users. They have all this data. And now we're in a situation where we're dealing with so much hate. I wrote a post. I wrote a post about President Obama the last day he's in office. It felt like I had to get it out. It was a post about how his message of hope was like my motivation. It encouraged me, right? It was have a black man as a president was something that I know many of us never dreamed we'd see. And now we have 45. And then we talk about accountability. Where do you think Twitter lies on like what it should do with 45? We know that he broke all the rules. We know that he's done things that, if I were to do, I'd be banned. And I've been on Twitter since 2006, one of the first 1,000 users. What do you think? Should they ban or what do you think they should do?
So I don't work for Twitter, so I don't know. I get that they have that newsworthy clause in the terms of service and that they say he's newsworthy, and that makes sense to me. Knowing the rules sort of deep enough, I don't know if he's, like, do I think that he is wild and nuts? Absolutely, right? Should he be president? Absolutely not. I don't know if he has so clearly violated like the terms of service as they're written. So like that could be an interesting push to Twitter to redefine the terms of service. I also honestly don't know if it'll matter unless all the platforms ban him. Like if he just goes on Facebook, we'll all be tuning in. Like that'll be the news next, right? He'll just be writing Facebook posts and he'll be writing comments, and then we'll be on Instagram. Like if they all sort of kick him off, I think that'd be interesting. But just pushing him from one platform to the next, he doesn't use Twitter. He uses Twitter enough, but he's not like a super user, right?
Yeah.
Where he's like on it all day. Yeah. He uses it in the morning, and like we could all be enduring morning Facebook posts just like we're enduring morning Twitter posts.
Do you think that's the biggest, something you said is that we all be tuning in. Like that right there, I looked at the election, I was like, the media should ignore him. They didn't ignore him. We held a fake, it was a real press conference talking about, I have a birth certificate, or I have proof that President Obama was not president. The media covered that before he decided to run. You believe that's where the media made a mistake? They tuned into that. They gave this man a voice.
I think that like the left is, it's one of the interesting things about being right, and I'm not saying that the left is always right, but when you're wrong, like think about a time you lied, is that like you work really hard on the lie, and you're trying to make the best lie you can, right? Like you're like, because I know I'm lying, so let me just like nail this. When you're right, you just overdo it, right? Like people like over-explain, they over-talk, and the left is right about him. And what you find is that being morally right about it leads to people being like, we should be civil. We should like have these rules of engagement. We should make sure that both sides are represented. Like that's sort of what's happening. So like Fox isn't even playing that game, right?
No.
On Fox, it's not both sides. It's sort of like one set of facts that aren't real, but like they nail it every day. But you see MSNBC being like, well, maybe Obama didn't call the people. You're like, what? How is that even, like, don't even, like, give that life, right? But it's this idea that, like, we have to be civil and we have to, and I'm looking forward to the left, like, just letting go of that. Yeah. Like, what would it look like to just
ignore it?
Yeah, like, that Anderson Cooper, did you see that picture where it was like, Trump said blah, 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 and parentheses he was like, it was a lie? You're like, yes, that should be, like, every single thing. It's like, it's just not true, Yeah,
got it. So let's talk about our people, man. Let's talk about black culture.
I thought you said albums.
No, I'm sorry. That's that southern accent. That's that southern accent.
Solange. Buy Solange's album. That's all I know.
Our culture, our people. I joke. I feel like when I'm more around black people, because I'm not around more black people in San Francisco, because I'm not sure you know the data, right? Someone tweeted recently, there's only 48,000 black people in San Francisco. And out of that 48,000, only 2,000 are not on government assistance.
Interesting.
So if you live in San Francisco or a black person, one in 2,000 not on government assistance, you're making it seem to be. What do you think needs to be the shift or should be a shift in our culture to how we can do more to create wealth or look at tech as a way to create wealth? Look at tech education. We know it's changing everything we do. It impacts our lives from time we wake up to time we go to sleep. What's our responsibility?
Yeah, I don't know what. So people should work hard just because like you should work hard and you're a person and you should be joyful, those things. But I'm mindful that like white people don't have assets because they worked hard, right? It wasn't like white people like woke up one day and were like, we're gonna work really hard and like therefore we're wealthy, right? White people have assets because the government literally gave them assets. So like the GI Bill, redlining, like disproportionately and intentionally benefited white people. So like you think about the single biggest asset that leads to wealth is homes. And in this country, we like gave white people homes. Like in Baltimore, there are whole neighborhoods that we sold $1 houses to white people that like, they have all these houses. Like that's how it happened. So it wasn't like white people worked really hard. And in this conversation, one of the ways that like whiteness performs this innocence, it's like, okay, we get the past, it was wrong, let us move on. And it's like, well, how do you move on without like some sort of redistribution, some sort of equity lens that like makes it honest? So I was talking to an expert on the racial wealth gap, and I don't know if there's a study called the Race to Zero, I think it's called. So the median household income for black families in 20 years will be zero. It'll be $0, the median wealth. That is wild. And she was saying, she was interesting. She was like, I get so tired of financial literacy. Like people talk about financial literacy for like low income kids and we need to teach it in high school. And she's like, poor people know how to spend their money better than anybody in the middle class because they have to, right? $100 is like the difference between like somewhere to sleep and somewhere like not to sleep, right? That like, it's not that you like don't understand how to use the money, it's that you just don't have any more of it, right? So how do we start to talk about like, what would it look like to undo redlining? What would it look like to do some intense skill development? So like to every single, when you see a group of third graders that can't read, it's not dumb third graders, it's like adults who failed them. So what would reparations, when we think about reparations, is this idea of acknowledgement and repair. So we acknowledge like the historical wrongdoings and we repair them. What would it look like to give every single kid born in poverty like a set of library books from birth to 12th grade, right? What would that look like to like teach kids how to code, but like at scale, right? Like no more after school programs, but like we do it as a part of like the structure. Because the program, and I believe in programs, I was an after school provider. I worked at one of the largest after school programs in the country at the Harlem Children's Zone. Like programs are important. People should have programs. Programs rarely change systems and structures. They're like these really interesting proof points that sometimes help systems and structures change their behavior, but but not always. So I'm interested in like, how do we put this energy into making like systems show up for kids and families, right? Which is not like, it's not like us working harder. Like we can't work hard enough to redistribute the wealth. Like no amount of me working hard is gonna do that.
Got it, great. Do you think about the intersection of those lines? I did a whiteboard session with my team, and it freaked me out. It scared me, and it also made me upset. If we had a whiteboard session, we do the graphs, we talk about and we boast about how America's going to be more diverse in 2040, 2050, Latin, African American, other demographics. The line is going like that. And then with the data you just talked about, the net worth of those same groups of Black and Latino, basically saying only net worth is 0. So we have the increase in wealth, the increase in numbers, net worth of owning down to 0, and then you still look at our buying, you do another line to that graph, look at our buying power. It's in the trillions of both demographics. So what is that saying about us as an economy, us as buying power, or is it just going back to what you were saying a few minutes ago, this system, how it's set up for a capitalist system where if the data is saying we're not going to be valuing anything, it's from the worth, how can we get over the hump? How can we, or the arrow's going the opposite direction?
Yeah, I don't have like a better answer besides reminding people that white people didn't get over the hump by their sheer will, Like the government pushed white people over the hump. Like that is literally what happened. That's not even like a hot take from DeRay. That is like the government literally gave white people like housing, gave them free education, like literally did it and did it to the disadvantage of everybody else.
Yeah.
And like what happens when you don't teach a whole people how to read for 200 years? Like there's like an impact there. So I don't know. I tweeted something about whiteness the other day, and like somebody emailed me and was like, DeRay, I'm offended when you should have said white supremacy, right? And I was like, just send me your phone number, let's talk this out on the phone. So I call this guy, and we talk about it, and like he's like offended that I'm like, he's like, you're making whiteness synonymous with like racist and white supremacy. And I'm saying to him, like I was intentional about using it because I want you to think about how whiteness itself is a metaphor for power, and it doesn't have to manifest in lynching and like racism to do damage, right? And he's like sort of trying to get it. And the thing that gets through to him was I was talking about Toni Morrison wrote this incredible essay called Playing in the Dark, and she talks about, and if you read Paradise, the first sentence is, and they shot the white girl first. And the reason she does that is because when we read text, every character is white until they are named something not white. That's just like that's like one of the ways that whiteness works. And he was like, you're right. And I'm like, I know I'm right. Like, yeah, this is the point, right? Like the fact that every character you read is white until they are named something else, like that is power. And that's not racist. That's not like lynching. That's not like overt racism, but that's how power shows up. Or the fact that nude is the color of your skin and not mine is power, right? And like helping people understand that wasn't because like white people didn't work hard for that, right? It wasn't like your personal. So white people are like, well, I didn't do it, and like I didn't own slaves and da-da-da. But it's like, yeah, but nude is still the color of your skin, right? Like that's the way power functions. Yeah. And until we name that, and like it's not a matter of personal responsibility. Yeah. Like white people didn't work hard for that as individuals. Like a system did that. And the only things that are like correct for that are at the system level.
Got it. So how do you deal with everything that's happening in the world, everything that's happening in your life, everything that's happening in America? Clearly, we know you care about, our culture, our race, but how you deal with it on a daily basis? What do you go to for joy and restoration and power and hope to keep you going?
Yeah, I'll say 3 things. One is I'm mindful of like what it means to empower people. Is like I'm not God, I can't give you power. But what I can do is help you find the power that you already have. And I think that one of the ways that oppression works is that it convinces you that you don't have power when you do. And what I've seen in protests that has been beautiful is that all these people across the country are like finding their power. They're like, I get it. This is mine. I can push. I can fight. Like that is huge. And when I get a little frustrated, I like see these like 16-year-olds walking out of high school. And I'm like, you better walk out, right? Like I think that's so dope. And like that is incredible. What I worry about, there are a couple of things. One is that there's some people more interested in fighting than winning, that people's like identity is rooted in battle. So when the battle goes away, they just like don't know who they are anymore. And we have to have a strategy that is bigger than a battle, right? That like the battle's a part of the work, but it can't be the only part of the work. I do think that there's some of our writers who have made pessimism cool. And the way that pessimism sort of shows up is that it pre-contaminates any solution. So it's like this idea that if everything's flawed, then my gift is finding the flaw And then you're like, well, what's your offering? It's like finding the flaw. And one of the reasons why they don't offer any sort of affirmative solution is because everything's flawed. So if you offer something, then that is necessarily, like, it's like this cycle. And I think that that is like a place that we all lose in. Like that just, like that we can't deconstruct all the bad things in the world and just magically believe that like the good things will emerge. Like we actually have to make the good things. And when I see people, and I think the rhetoric is beautiful, it's like, well, we got to start over and like we got to burn it down and da-da-da. And it's like, we don't ever start from the Garden of Eden. We will always start from the ashes. So like burning this all down won't end patriarchy, sexism, race, like all those, the isms will still be there. Like that'll still be a whole lot of work to do. So what does it mean to take this and own this and change it into something? I'm really hopeful about that.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. Try to get it to a lightning round right quick. So favorite person you interview in your podcast?
Tracy Ellis Ross.
Oh, nice.
She was great.
Why? What made that?
She's just so joyful. Like there's like a lot of joy. If you see her on Blackish, she's like 10 times better than that, right? Like she actually is like even better if you can possibly believe that.
Favorite tech company?
I love Twitter.
Favorite CEO?
Well, that's not nice. I don't know. I'll say Jack. I love Twitter.
Will we ever see DeRay be a tech founder? Not a podcast, but tech founder, launch a product?
I think that there's an opportunity for tech to do something really transformative in the activism space, and we're working on something. Maybe we'll work with you on it.
All right.
And all of you. We need everybody. I don't know what. I just know what should be built. I don't know how to do it. You know.
Got it. Wordplay. First word to come to your mind. One word. Race.
Justice.
America.
Struggling.
Family.
DeRay, my sister.
Trump.
Sad.
Obama.
Hope.
Black women.
Who?
Black women.
Oh, strong.
Social media.
Power.
Future of news.
We'll see.
Civil rights.
Activists.
Do it for the culture.
Black people.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
That's it.